webcams, they're not terribly expensive.
The cord was in the way of my gavel. That's okay. We are already actually in session because we had executive session before this. So if we would all stand for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time that we have our recognition of visitors. Do we have any? No? Okay. All right, so then we will move to the presentations to the board. First up, our representative from Student Council.
So Student Council's main priority right now is the Knox County Special Athletes Basketball Game, which is a basketball game held for the special needs students at our school versus the staff, and that will be held in Field Gym. We have worked on concessions, helped with t-shirts, and come up with games for halftime. We set up a half-court shootout and an airplane throwing contest for the little ones, and we also made fat heads for the players and are really excited to support them. This will be next Monday, March 19th. We're also preparing the blood drive for next month, soon after spring break, and might even do a babysitting night at the high school for the staff. And the Breakfast of Champions is also coming up, which is a recognition of students and their achievements.
Great. Any questions?
What time is that basketball game?
I believe 6 o'clock.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next, we will move on to our recognition of our state qualifiers. Mr. Slater.
Thank you. This is always a special time in the season as we get into our winter season where we recognize some pretty outstanding accomplishments. And this winter by no means is any exception. The first person I would like to introduce is our wrestling coach, Mr. Greg Leibach. Coach Leibach.
Robert Castellano was the first wrestling state qualifier for Galesburg in 6 years, which is a heck of an accomplishment. He was the first wrestler that I was able to accompany to the state tournament, so that makes it especially fun for me. And once we got there, we had accomplished one goal. When Robert got there, it would have been easy to maybe be overwhelmed by the big stage of the State Farm Center in Champaign, but he really rose to the occasion. And match after match at the tournament, he worked himself into a medal position, finished 4th, and was the first medalist for Galesburg in 14 years. So Robert.
You excited? Great. Congratulations, Rob.
Next, I would like to call our boys swimming and diving team this year, Mr. Ray Van Oudegem and Coach Tammy Qualls. Before we introduce our 2 state qualifying swimmers and diver, I would like to recognize Mrs. Tammy Qualls. She was our sectional diving coach of the year, and this is actually the 2nd season. Tammy had an outstanding diver for the girls' season and has a state qualifier for the boys' season. So congratulations to Tammy.
Hi, thank you everybody for being here tonight. Thanks for having us come in and talk. It's a very special night to recognize anybody who achieved such great success in their sport. And Austin was our diver who made it to state and finished 46th. In the state. A little bit about what they do. As far as practice, we do have 2 mornings a week that they work out that are mandatory, and then 5 nights a week mandatory. And then in the morning, there was some optional swimming that they attended also. And a little bit of background about swimming. I just can reference a few other sports like track, soccer, and golf has 3 classes. Basketball has 4, and I know football has 8 classes. Swimming has 1 class. And at the state swim meet this year, there were 348 teams represented in the state of Illinois. So it's a very good accomplishment just to even make it there, with all suburbia of Chicago being there itself too. And now Drew Giles, our breaststroker, continued to get better every year. And probably the most important thing about this season was he swam this one kid who beat him from Moline. He beat him about 5 times this season. And then Drew got him at conference and beat him at sectionals. So he kept improving. And he is now the 2nd fastest swimmer in school history. And Austin is the 3rd best scorer in school history in diving. So I think Tammy would like to say something about Austin a little bit.
Well, this is my 2nd year coaching diving, and I have to say that Austin helped me learn really a lot about coaching diving and how to do that. And so he really did a lot of very positive things himself. But this year he came out and he had kind of a rough start, but he decided right about after that rough beginning that he could do this and he's going to push himself harder than he's ever pushed himself. And he really did a great job. He won not only our conference, but then went on and won our sectionals. And there were some people gunning for him. So, you know, when you win that conference title and then the next week you're going back and going for sectionals, or, you know, it's really competitive. And so he did a great job with his dives. And, you know, I wish you could all see some of the beautiful dives that he had. He's really talented athlete. And so, and I believe, Ray, that we've not had a diver go to state since, boys diver since
1994.
Yeah. 1994.
1994. You hear it. You know,
Tony Sibley.
Tony Sibley is the guy. And so, that's a really a great honor. And so we were really proud of the guys. And after his first dive, Austin was actually in 11th place. And so, but then you just have some other stressors. But boy, it was an exciting time. So I'm really proud of both of these gentlemen. They did a great job representing our school.
On behalf of Mr. Dean Petrie, I would like to recognize and introduce the ILMEA All-State participants or All-State members from Galesburg High School this year. ILMEA it's really kind of a bigger deal than the IHSA. It's the music and the fine arts people really recognize ILMEA as really the state team as opposed to the IHSA. And that's why you see so many more people compete in that as opposed to the IHSA. This year, the ILMEA All-State from Galesburg is Lucas Schroyer. And Lucas' second year. Junior Caden Wilson for band. And that was for orchestra, not band. Caitlin Smith, All-State Chorus. Sophomore. Another sophomore, Samira Boleen, All-State Chorus. Junior AJ Perez, All-State Chorus. And again, for a second year, junior Cole Petrie, All-State Honors Chorus. All right, thank you very much. If I can have the people who received the certificate, we'll come out here in the hall and we'll take a picture.
And next up, we have Teresa Powell, who's going to talk to us about Relay for Life.
Actually, the girls are going to present.
Oh, they're going to present. Wonderful. Well, come on up, ladies.
So on February 13th, Churchill vs. Lombard held their second annual Paint the Town Purple event to raise money for the American Cancer Society. Churchill and Lombard sold t-shirts, autographed volleyballs, and held 50-50 raffles.
Tonight, Churchill and Lombard volleyball teams present a check to Sarah Larmer from Relay to Life for $1,025 on behalf of the We Fight Together volleyball game. We would also like to thank MC Sports for helping design the shirts, parents Sarah Young and Libby Keith for organizing this event. Our community, school,
Actually, the amount is $1,135.
Good job, ladies.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, so we will now move to the approval of our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any discussion? Allison?
Ryan.
Yes.
Pickrell. Aye. Sherby.
Aye.
Saban.
Aye.
Bates. Fuentes.
Aye.
Paskevich. Yes.
Okay, and for those of you who are new, we implemented a new agenda format at last month's board meeting. Per the data that we received back from our community engagement meetings, we have now decided to format our agenda based on the 3 focus areas that we found through that data. So focus area 1, relevant skills that lead to employability for our district. And first item on that is our administrative report on curriculum.
If it's okay with you, I'll just combine A and B. So the report on curriculum, we, as you know, met in February to finalize the horizontal part of our curriculum and then really move into the vertical part of our curriculum to have groups of teachers working across grade levels, across building levels, and that went very well. And hoping, as long as everything progresses appropriately, we should be able to get you a report on our K-12 horizontally and vertically articulated curriculum by the end of the year for your consideration. So everything's moving according to plan. I feel very good about the progress we've made. As it goes with item B, the curriculum committee met last week, and we have 2 goals that we would like to present for your consideration for next month's final adoption. And unless one of you wants to do the presentation. Oh, okay, I did take that. 2 goals, and they're kind of, one is very straightforward, the other one's a little bit broader. One is to create a curriculum audit instrument and then to perform curriculum audits across the district, especially in areas where we have multiple people teaching the same subject, to make sure that we are horizontally doing what we say we are doing. And then secondly is to create a district-wide rubric for writing and to create a district-wide rubric for public speaking. So those will be a little bit broad. Obviously, there's writing rubrics for different types of writing and different types of public speaking. So very excited to get that work done if the board adopts that. I hope that we would then, at the end of next year, have a rubric available for both writing and public speaking for all district buildings in 2019. Right? Okay. I took good notes.
Questions? No questions? Other board members at the table are okay with and moving forward with presenting us a rubric next month?
Just the goal to have
The goal, okay, the goal.
We're not that
Not like we have anything to do. Right? So we're good with this plan. C, moving on to C, our building reports. Are there any questions from board members regarding building reports?
Do we have the data for Nielsen, even though we don't have a report. That it's those things.
We do, and I apologize if there wasn't one in there.
It hasn't been, I just
And
know,
that
I
should have
don't
been, yeah.
expect a report,
But yes,
but
we do have it.
the numbers should,
Yes, we will make sure that gets put in next month.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I miss them being outlaid, like individually, because I didn't even recognize that Nielsen's wasn't in there because I was going through the 30.
And speaking of Nielsen, if I may, last month we hired the principal for Nielsen and she wasn't able to come. And since we're talking about Nielsen, she's sitting right there. Katie, you want to stand up just so everybody can see? Katie Jennings, the new principal at Nielsen. Can you get that building report?
Okay, next, the report for special education. Dr. McShaw.
Special education continues to look for certified, non-certified staff for the rest of this year and for the upcoming school year. We did conduct an all-day training for paraprofessionals on February 16th, Institute Day. I thought it went very well. There were some creative ideas for future training for them, so we'll continue to work on that. We're working on our projections for next year, as well as the annual needs assessment, which will close out this Friday. And so I hope to have kind of a summary of what comes out of it for April's notes and meeting. We're working on extended school year, and I meet with the cooperative, the Knox Warren Cooperative, tomorrow to talk about, they only have 3 or 4 kids they're looking at, so we're looking at could we take those kids in and then bill them for those services. And then, of course, the annual review of the behavior policy. I'm putting together team members and collecting data, so I'll be hitting Maury up here in the near future to start going through some of that. So, thank you.
Any
I have 2
questions?
questions. Where is the extended school year taking place this summer?
It will take place at Steel, sir. It is air conditioned, and most of the autism sensory type equipment is located in that building, so it makes sense instead of trying to move some of that stuff.
Thank you. Now, earlier in the year, you presented a budget which I was not clear about. I was wondering how the contractual service contract is working out with the co-op for the OT and PT services. Is that coming in around where you expected, more expensive, less expensive? How's it coming?
From what I can project, it's coming in right around where it was expected. It's kind of floats. It depends, each month it floats a little bit, or each quarter it floats a little bit, depending on how many students are added or dropped to OT, PT services.
They've got enough personnel to fill their needs up.
Yes, sir. And in hearing and vision. We also contract through them for hearing and vision services, but their contract for vision is a subcontract with an outside agency. There are currently very few vision impaired people around, as well as educational interpreters. I'm working with ICC for our needs for next year for interpreter.
Thank you.
Turn by my thoughts, sorry. Great, thanks. I'm gonna go back to building reports for a moment because I forgot I had a note on a different page. I just wanted to mention, and I was trying to look around to see if Kim was in the audience, but I see John Pratt. Oh, there's Kim. I just wanted to thank both of you for the BPAC report. That summary was great. I liked that a lot. And I'm glad to see that the parental involvement, that was I liked that a lot. I just wanted to let you guys know that. Because that's new. That's a new report to our building reports. Okay, sorry about that. No, sorry, she's kind of short.
It is nice the new principal sitting up front. Maybe she should know that's what she's supposed to say.
Okay, focus area 2, facilities that assist in skill acquisition. Wow, folks, it is Monday. Okay,
You gotta get it for
I know. I'm not in a good way right now. Building and grounds committee discussion.
So with your approval, I'm going to combine A and D because they are related. The report for D, I'm going to actually hit first. We are working with building principals and not their fault in any way, shape, or form. But we have to get their building maps to them, and we're trying to color code the building so that we know visually, a quick reference, how much we're utilizing each building. And the high school is a little bit different than the junior highs are a little bit different than the grade schools. Are all kind of similar in how we'll do it. But so the goal is for next month that you will have a very easy way of looking and say, okay, this building, or this many rooms are occupied this much time during the day. So very quick reference. We felt that'd be a lot easier. A list of rooms and be like, okay, where's that? So we're working on that, but that goes along with item number A, or letter A, building and grounds committee discussion. So we are working on fleshing out the building study that was submitted to you in January of 2017, and are working with trying to come up with 3 plans going forward that we can then present to you at some point, spring or summer, to be able to have a time for community input and to let people review those to see what the thoughts are and any feedback and maybe some holes that we might have missed as we look through this. And so that committee is focusing really just on that goal at this time. And we'll hopefully have something to you, as I said, early summer, I would guess, for your initial consideration to review.
Questions from board members?
Yes. I thought one of the things we were going to do as part of this process early, and this is getting passed early, is looking at our facility use moving into next year. Not a long-term plan, it's just make sure we're maximizing the resources. We have this discussion, right? And it's even in one of our policies. And we have, I'm not making this up, right?
We talked about it in connection with the boundary line discussion.
Right, weren't we looking at something even for next year? No.
We did meet for the boundary study discussion, and that's down in the next area, which that will be addressed on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You weren't wrong. That is something that we're going to be. Matt wants us to make sure we have our microphone on. So we want to, yeah. So okay, that is something we are going to address, and it is something that you did make a priority. We have reasons for that. We will do that in a little bit.
Sorry.
Dr. Casper, do you want to talk about what will be out for bid on next month?
Correct. So out for bid on next month's, and that you can do that on yours as well, but update on the district building project. We are going to be putting out to bid, expanding and creating a new parking lot at Silas Willard, where for somebody who grew up here, where the old Giants used to be. That's how I look at it. The corner of Fremont Seminary, with some setback for a berm or visual barrier there, and perhaps a little bit of light. And then the plan is to reverse the course of the one-way road there on the west side of Silas Willard to make that go north. And some curbage also sort of restrict the flow. People can't just turn. If it all goes according to plan, and we'll have it in a visual presentation for you next month. You cannot head east on Fremont and turn north onto that road, into that one-lane road. We're going to make it so you have to be coming west. Because traffic backs up so bad at that intersection. We're going to reroute traffic that way. And then the buses, if everything goes according to plan, the buses would then pick up on the east side instead of where they used to pick up on the old side. But in a way to try to reduce traffic congestion there. It can take a very long time if you get there at the wrong time, which Tiffany had me meeting with her one day, and I was a half hour late. I left 20 minutes early. I couldn't get through the traffic. So, yeah, I'm convinced that something needs to change.
I just hope we make the corner look nice.
That is part of the plan.
Specifically to make sure it isn't just
Yeah, no.
Do we want to go ahead and continue on the update on building projects since that's part of that conversation?
Sure.
We have a couple other projects.
Microphone.
We have a couple other projects that we discussed in building and grounds for the summer. We're also looking at resurfacing the main parking lot at GHS and the vocational, kind of the back drive there. It's needing some work. We are going to continue to install ventilation fans in the GHS tunnels to improve air movement and circulation throughout GHS.
There are 7 wings on the Hawthorne facility that are in need of new roofing. We are not going to do all 7 roofs this summer, but we're going to focus on 2 wings and start replacing 2 wings at a time there. And then we're going to be removing the carpeting in the library and just polishing the concrete and leaving it a bare floor. We've had some critter issues in there, and that should hopefully solve that issue. So those are the summer.
What's the next one again?
Polishing the library floor, just leaving the bare concrete. Tunnel work in Hawthorne.
Yeah, on Hawthorne, I guess the question is, do we need all those buildings?
We do. I mean,
How can we, when our enrollment is down, we're looking at having less buildings. Our maintenance staff is down. I can't understand how we need as many buildings as we own out there.
well, Mr. Reed and I would love to give you a tour. of
Sure, I've
Hawthorne.
been there many times.
Yeah.
It wasn't used well when we had hundreds more children, and I would love that tour.
And they have really cleaned up a lot of Hawthorne in the last 2 years, making it much more efficient, getting rid of things that have been stored there for years that are never going to get used again. So he's done a lot of work, so I know he would be happy to.
Yes, the question is, if we've gotten rid of stuff, how come we need 7 buildings? Okay, I'll be
There's
happy to
7
look.
wings, yes.
I know it there. Okay, thank you. We'll schedule something. We close schools to save money, we should be able to close other things to save money as well.
Okay, any other questions about items A, C, and D? No? Okay, so the budget committee discussion. Budget committee also met. We've been busy in this meeting. So in our budget committee discussion, Member Sherpy and Dr. Aspen and I talked about what our goals are in this committee, and what we came to is the overriding question is whether or not our budget allocations are in line with our mission, right? What do we say that we're doing, and are we spending our money in that capacity? So what we have asked are to ask all of the buildings to work on developing worksheets on their actual budgets. What are you actually using right now? Toward what in that capacity? And then desired budgets based on the new evidence-based model, and that will come in June or July, right? So what are you doing now? Where is that money being spent? How is that money being spent? And then in light of the fact that we have the new evidence-based model, and there's those 26 indicators that we're going to be provided funding on from the state, how are our budgets lining up with that? Are they lining up with that? And what would we need in order for our budgets to line up with that? Is that making sense? Okay, so hopefully by the time we receive the allocations and we receive our it's not really rating, our designation, our.
Right, each building will receive a designation from the state, usually to be a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And what we've been told so far is only those schools that are a 3 or a 4 will receive notification this summer, but it's the state, so, you know, maybe we'll hear that next year. I don't know, like I got science assessments from 1981 history, so. Theoretically, in June, we're supposed to hear if we're tier 3 or 4. We don't know how much.
And for those of you who may not be aware, tier 3 means that there may be a subpopulation in one of our buildings that is not meeting expectations, and tier 4 means that the school, right, is not meeting expectations.
It is bottom 5%.
Bottom 5% of schools. So our goal would not to be there. However, we'll have those indicators hopefully by this summer. And so our goal will then to just to make sure that we're lining up, right? If those 26 indicators are what this model says are the best indicators for a successful education, then how are we basically putting our money where our mouth is, right?
Well, and just to add one thing, that a big difference between current and previous district academic rating, that way, is districts have always been rated before, and now it will only be buildings. So those buildings will get our designation, the district will get nothing. And so they're going to line up your evidence-based funding based on what the 26 pieces of research say should be in your building, given your building's demographics. And then your building will get a rating, a designation based upon its academic performance. And then we'll be able to compare those, if the actual to desired is far off and your building is rated whatever, maybe we need to course correct in some way, shape, or form. So the budget committee would like to look at those terms.
So then our action plan would be after that point. So now we're just gathering data. Okay. Questions? Great. Moving on to focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. Oh, guess what? I'm up again. Red committee discussion. Okay, again, the Red Committee also has met. Member Banks, Dr. Aspen, and I sat down and kind of revisited what RED means, the recruitment for educational diversity. And because there's very broad language in our policy, we sat down again and said, what's our stated purpose? Our stated purpose is building an inclusive educational community from our standpoint as a committee. So what does that mean, right? So what we looked at, given some of the professional area that I work in my day job, I'm aware of a rubric that exists that allows an institution academically focused to determine how they are as an inclusive body. Are they living in these 6 areas kind of from a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community environment? And there are 6 areas that you can look at. And so we're going to take a look at that rubric. And we're going to go through it as a subcommittee and kind of just see what we think it looks like or where we kind of think the district is. But then we're going to also work with buildings to have them look at that same rubric, administrators. And so we're gonna take a look at that to see where it is that we're landing in this area, and then kind of see what does it mean moving forward. How do we do better and work intentionally to make sure that we are really responding to the needs of our community in all of our buildings. So we're gonna work on that, and then at some time in the future months after we've had some preliminary conversations based on that rubric, we'll be looking at putting together an ad hoc committee constructed with staff, students, community members, to also have some ongoing conversations in that area. Anything that Member Banks or Dr. Axel want to add?
Summed it up pretty well.
Okay. Any questions from board members? Great. And then we will move on to consider approval of policy revisions, sections 3 and 4. This is the second reading. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Discussion?
We had one item that was left open on my records, and I didn't bring the number. I guess there's the one regarding investments. So the question remained: did we want 25% fund balances, or did we want 50% fund balances, or 90 days versus 180 days, which is the same question?
I thought those changes were needed.
No, they were incongruous. Do you remember? One said 90, one said 50, or the other. So we needed to make it one or the other.
Maury, the edit I made was just what Jen recommended.
Oh, okay, that's not
For
something.
you guys to weigh in.
I just moved for that piece.
The 180 days.
180 days.
Considering the volatility of state funding, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, so 180 days. Any other questions, comments? Allison?
Pepperell? Aye.
Shirley?
Aye.
Stegman?
Aye.
Thanks. Mr. Montez?
Aye.
Passage? Lyon?
Yes.
Okay, we will move on to our first reading of Board Policy Manual Sections 5 and 6, along with current press policies. Who wants to begin?
You know.
Were we supposed to? I felt bad last time, so I didn't. I have the wrong thing, Paul.
As he's pulling up the document that he needs, just to remind folks in the audience, the board has decided to take on an annual review of all of the policies in our board policy manual to make sure that everything is relevant and in line with current practice and whether or not it needs to be a current practice or not. So that's where we're at, and we've gone through 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we are now going to discuss 5 and 6. So hang on to your seats, folks. This is going to be a lot of fun.
In multiple places, it talks about us having a drug-free awareness program. Do we have such a piece? It's referenced, the first time is 5:50. I found it in a few pieces. Do we have such a thing?
We no longer have the DARE program in K through 5.
This is talking more of faculty, I believe.
Oh, yeah, this is faculty.
Well, we have that through the Ed Leaders Network training, but referring to the comprehensive, that's a stretch.
Okay. Also, do we still have an employee assistance program? Yeah, I think there are references in this policy to that, a few places. And then, Knox College may not be happy about this, but in section 5:260, it talks about we only get student teachers from university-based programs. I mean, colleges are out, I guess. I think it should be post-secondary. The thing that bothers me is we pay someone to write these things. They shouldn't be sending us to adopt. These aren't as inclusive as they should be. 5:170, it talks about the use of movies. I just hope that their use of movies for instructional practices are right now violating any copyright laws. I'm not sure we have any assurances of that, or what kind of training staff get on how to use commercial materials in the classrooms.
I don't know.
I didn't expect you to.
No.
It's a question of we say that we're going to be doing that.
Right.
And then 5:285 talks about bus drivers. What is we do in terms of those people that drive activity buses? Do they also go through a random screening for substances?
No, they don't. Our insurance company only requires that they provide a valid driver's license each year for insurance, but we do not screen them as we would a regular school bus driver.
Should we? I don't know. That's somewhat rhetorical.
I'll be with that.
I think I'm done.
Dr. Aspen, did you get those notes?
I saw Allison writing that one out, and I'm writing the rest for
I
sure.
skipped this.
I was looking at policy 550, and I was just wondering if that also included, this is the policy concerning the prohibiting tobacco use by employees. I was wondering if that also includes electronic cigarettes and vaping.
It does, we've enforced it that way. Not that we've had
But
issues.
just by reading the policy, I couldn't tell
Yeah.
that was.
I'll write that in.
Some kind of people that do that sort of thing.
Well, and Mr. Hawkins just this weekend gave me a lesson on something he learned in grad school about fake pens that look like USB things, right? Is that what they were? That JUUL, right?
Might have been before.
That was. So it looked like a little jump drive, and you tap something to it, and you vape from that. So, good thing. It's a good thing Mr. Hawkins is out there looking at the latest technology on vaping. So we're safe. We got that.
Yeah, I vape all the time.
And there you go. You look like the type.
additional, okay, I got it.
Is that okay?
I have a few, they're not critical things, they're cleanup things, I think. 550, not 550, I'm at 550, I'm brain. 580, which is about jury duty, and says that we will pay people that get called to jury duty, which is fine. Every other place I've ever worked, it also said that if we were paid, we had to reimburse the district for that. Like sometimes you get a pay for being on jury, and you have to return that to your place of business if they pay you.
Right.
I don't know if that's something we need to add in there. And then the other thing is, I don't know that you always have 5 days prior notice, or if you need to put a when possible or something. Yeah, in there.
You're right, every other place I've worked, we do first.
Yeah, I saw it. And maybe we do it, but I don't know if that's been an issue, I just noticed that when I was reading. The next one I do have an issue on 590, abuse and neglected child reporting. I have concerns that a new teacher is given an entire year to complete that training. If it were my way, they wouldn't go into the classroom without having it. It's like 2 hours online. It's not like it's, they have to go away or spend any money or anything else. They have to sign the form acknowledging that they're mandated reporters before we can hire. But then we give them a year to complete that training, and that bothers me a lot. So I think we should change that.
It's 5:30, says they sign the form when we start.
So we have them here before, we could get that.
Especially given, all the stuff in the news about mental health and things like that, because emotional abuse is a biggie too, so. Then, again, this is something that's just kind of a cleanup thing. 5:100. Number 4 says training for school personnel who work with students in grades 7 through 12. I think given the makeup of our schools, it should be 6 through 12. Because it's a junior high, middle school thing. Same thing with 5A. Staff development for local school site personnel who work with students in grades kindergarten through 8. In the detection, reporting, and prevention, I'm not sure why that's not kindergarten through 12. And then number 6 also says the same thing as the grades 7 through 12, but I think should be 6 through 12.
And should that also be preschool?
Not, well, let me see.
Are you talking about 5A membership?
Yes, get used in the neglected child reporting act.
5A should be through 12.
Let's say pre-K.
Oh, yeah, pre-K, right, yes, it should be pre-K, Then number 6 is the same thing with the grades 6 through 12 as opposed to 7 through 12. It's talking about dating, it's just again because of the makeup of our schools. I think we should have, that should say 6 through 12. And that's it for 5 that I have.
Anybody else for 5 before I add mine? Okay. 5:10, I'm wondering, I know it's press policy, but I'm wondering if instead of using the word minority, we could use underrepresented. Every time I hear the word minority, it rubs me the wrong way. I'm not inferior because of my ethnicity, so I would prefer underrepresented if no one else disagrees. 5:20, and this is also within the current press packet. I don't know how I feel about the part of that policy that says in making a complaint, that if someone feels comfortable confronting the person that has participated in the behavior, I just don't encourage people on a regular basis if they're feeling sexually harassed to go to the person that they feel is the one harassing them to say, could you please stop harassing me? I know it says if you feel comfortable, I just don't, I mean, I'm looking at, I don't want to put her on the spot, but my employer's HR directors in the audience, and I'm thinking, I don't know if that would fly on our campus. No.
What if you change that word should to may?
Well, I think it's just the fact there's a lot, oftentimes if harassment is occurring in a workplace, there's power differentials. And so even putting it in a policy that if they feel like they can, invites, you know, all kinds of other kinds of challenges, right? Is there going to be retaliation? Is there going to be a response? Is there, I mean, there's just a lot of not cool things that could happen in any of that. And I understand that maybe it's allowing employees to have some power over their situation. But it also means that if they're willing to confront an individual, we also don't know about something. And so then what happens if it escalates and the first time we're having a report is not the first time that it's happened? So I just, that language for me is problematic. I think that if someone feels as if they're being harassed in some capacity, they should be making a report to their supervisor. Go ahead.
I don't have a problem with changing the language, but I do have a problem with telling somebody they can't confront their aggressor if they want to. Sometimes if someone is doing it, and sometimes people truly don't really understand what they're doing and how it's coming across. And sometimes if you simply say, look, you know, you've done this a couple of times, I'm not comfortable with this, I really want you to stop. That's the end of it. And that's all that's really needed. So I can see changing language, I just don't want to make it so that they, you know, we're forbidding them to confront them should they choose to do so. I don't know.
Changing the language to may would be okay with me. I'm looking at legal representation.
I think both concerns are valid. I think you can change it, but I think it does need to be clear that if someone wants to confront the aggressor, that they're not prohibited from doing it.
So maybe changing the language to may. Again, the only other thing I'll comment is there's a lot of places in policies 5 for sure that we are talking about contracts. So just making sure if we're going to be linking contracts in other sections that we're making sure to link them in this. I just had a question about 5:30. It says something about our orientation. I'm just curious, what does our orientation for new employees look like?
Teacher orientation?
Yeah.
It's a 3-day program.
Oh, sorry.
It's a 3-day program that has pretty full agendas all 3 days. Goes through, we have teachers come in, giving examples of a lot of different activities, teaching strategies. They spend time with me, they spend time getting to know others, administrators, talk about this. So it's actually one of my favorite things.
Great, thank you. 5:60, Mrs. Ham, I think this relates to your position. It's about reimbursement. And my question was, do we ask for approval before items are purchased, or do staff purchase and then we reimburse on the back end and they may be declined if they're not, whatever?
Oh,
okay.
So typically it goes through an approval process through Skyward for anything that's related to the budget. For our activity counts, that is For our activity counts, sometimes it is a reimbursement model. Through the regular budget, very few items are done on a reimbursement. Excuse me, after the fact. It's usually pre-approval because we order everything through a PO system.
Okay. And 5:1, that is all about all of the professional development that our staff should be getting in it. And as Member Banks pointed out, how often it should be happening. I know that I asked this last month, but how are we tracking that all of our employees are actually doing this? And because I know some of the stuff that we do in my employment, and it is really easy to turn that video on, and then we're doing something else.
Mike, would like me to comment on that? Sure. For the mandated trainings, we use Ed Leaders Network. Those are interactive videos. You watch 3 minutes, you answer questions based on what you watched in order to get to the next 3 minutes of video and that sort of thing. So in order to complete, you have to get 80% accuracy on those response questions. So you can't go through the videos without at least answering questions showing that you know the stuff. And then every building principal can get in and monitor who's doing what through their interface.
Okay. I think for me, the areas that I, of course, most focus on, number 6 in that around teen dating violence, number 7, ongoing development, regarding school exclusion and justice system involvement, right? Effective classroom management strategies, culturally responsive discipline, and developmentally appropriate disciplinary methods. And I know there was something in here about culturally relevant. Maybe it's not in this thing. So those are the areas that I want to make sure that we are, I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're tracking, we're understanding, we're having conversations. Section 5:260 in regards to, I think that's the student teaching, that Maureen. My question is, I didn't see it, and maybe it was because I was on page 40 of 54 pages or something like that. But what tools or what do we have in process right now that allows the programs to be evaluated? So is there some kind of feedback method where, other than just grading the student teaching interns, that we're providing feedback to the programs that we're working with, or that the programs that we're working with are able to provide feedback to us as a district?
Well, I would ask if there's a teacher, is there a teacher out there that has a student teacher right now or is having a listening? Would you, at least what you've done this year?
Well, twice during the process in the middle and at the end, we fill in a pretty lengthy rubric from Knox, which I believe is aligned to something with the state, right? Anyway, it has a lot of different categories where we rate the student. And then there's a spot for a narrative report. So
But you don't rate the program, right?
I'm just rating the student.
Right.
So I mean, it's not policy, but I'd like to see if there is something that put into practice that periodically teachers that are hosting students have an opportunity to talk to the programs that they're hosting students from to say, these are the kinds of things that we're seeing. These are the kinds of things that could use improvement. And then on the other side, what's some of the feedback that we're getting from fresh eyes in our classroom in our buildings to say, hey,
And I just got a letter Friday, it was late last week, from Monmouth College asking for just that.
Oh.
So there's one,
Okay.
but I don't receive.
It might, be great if we're proactive on that. And that's not part of policy, that's part of practice, but it's related to the policy. And that's it for me for policy 5. Are we ready to move to policy 6? All right, and look, Member Glasnovich is ready for policy 6. All right, go ahead, Member Glasnovich.
No, I don't.
She's just ready to move
You're just
on.
ready to move on. Okay, all right. Any concerns about policy 6?
Good question.
Okay.
On 6:110, it talks about graduation incentive program. We have such a visa. If we do, what does it look like? Yeah, we do. Okay. I mean, we give a gold diploma, a silver, and a platinum. I don't know. It's talking about students who are in difficulty, so we're encouraging them to continue. It's part of these policies that
You mean
we can look it up.
if they're not, if they haven't met the graduation requirements to graduate with their class on time, to give them.
programs for students at risk of academic failure and or dropping out of school graduation incentives program. A student who's below the age of 20 is eligible to enroll in graduation incentives program if she and goes on. And it doesn't talk about what it is.
That sounds like Chief just now. I'm getting a nod from Mr. Spring. I don't know if that's clearly stated. I don't know that it's clearly stated in our policy that it's Chief just North because this is a statewide policy.
It was adopted in 2015.
I don't know. It's a nice thing, it doesn't say exactly what
Wait, let's.
enroll. Okay. You probably should know. Okay, just, was a reference to something that wasn't. Was. Just so we flesh that out. We need a larger.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm guessing that's boilerplate language, because I know I've seen it in my last district. I think that's boilerplate if you do it. Because it says down there, it says above it, the may do these things, and then graduation incentives is in there. And if you have a graduation incentives program, you can do that.
Which for us specifically in practice is Chief just North.
6:130 talks about gifted and talented education, and we have a plan. Do we? Or did we?
I don't know if we do anything.
Yeah.
I don't know either. It says we have one. I'm not, I think it's something that's. Well, we know we have different for talented students who did well at the music assembly, diving. So the talent we're taking into account well. The academic giftedness, we need to look at that also. At least they haven't come this year.
I don't remember the last time we had a 54 game. Do you? It's been a while, right?
I'm not saying it has to be coordinated necessarily.
Right.
But do we have a program, do we have a model, do we have resources? What have all the resources we want when we add those people, or I don't know. Maybe it's something as you go through the curriculum to look at and tie into this policy then.
Any other?
Yeah, two more. Okay, that's what it refers to the Title I compact. Do we have that? If so, can we get it sent to me or all this? It looked like an interesting document. We haven't got it before, have we?
Probably not, we can take it to you.
Good, thank you. And then the one that I didn't want to do was 6:190 is the one on eligibility requirements for extracurriculars. Now, when we did a change in that book that everyone's assigned, handbook for students, or when we made a change this past year, we didn't approve the policy change. So are these things the same or are they different right now? Be my question.
No, they should be aligned because we actually made that policy. We
Did we
made
make a
that.
policy change at the same time?
We made it, I believe, prior to you coming on the board.
I thought last year we changed something in the requirements. Mr. Flater brought something to our attention. We made a change. Maybe I know.
About eligibility.
Was there a change this past year on that?
Yes, we dropped the 1.75 requirement from one term to the next term.
It's still in our policy. It's still in our policy. That's my question. If we make a change, we probably should change both.
That was adopted back in 2014.
Okay. Okay.
So we need to update our policy.
And also the policy refers to the reality on the floor in the building secondary school today. But as moving forward, it may not reflect the policy, so we'll have to address that if such changes. Okay? Thank you.
Member Banks, did you have some?
I have a few. At the very beginning, under quality insurance, says number 5 says in accordance with blah blah school code, administer at least biennially a survey of learning conditions on the instructional environment within the school to at minimum students in grades 6 through 12 and teachers. Have we done such a thing?
That's the,
If so, I'd love to see it.
that's the 5 essential survey that we did last year and we would do again next year.
Okay, okay. I just, and,
Although I will tell you that we just learned that that's probably gonna have to start being done every year. So if it is, then we'll probably have to change this.
okay, I'll come in some, I just like to be interested to see what the perception is. 6:30, references half-day kindergarten. Do we have such a thing?
We have to have half-day kindergarten as an option. Because if a parent wants to opt into half-day kindergarten, you have to allow them to take half-day kindergarten.
So do we currently have anyone in half-day kindergarten?
I don't believe we have any.
And how does that child that attends a half-day kindergarten, where do they go the next year? I mean, they reach the number of, what if they don't reach the same goals or sight words? So they have to have so many things? Or they don't because it's not required, they just go ahead, okay. All right, I'm good with that. 6:60.
You guys aren't writing that one down though, right? Because we don't advertise that part. Half-day kindergarten. But no, by law, you have to, if a parent requests it, you have to.
Okay. All right, 6:60. We get, do we have Kirsty back in the curriculum for next year? Since we're working on all this curriculum stuff?
One of the items I have not looked at, so
It says the former third-grade teacher. Since all the makers saw fit to put that back in the schools.
Anything else, Member?
And then 6 to 10, and this is again just a question. It says that superintendent annually presents a list of textbooks and materials being used in the district. Again, if there's such a list somewhere, I'd just be curious to look at it sometime. And I don't know that you've done that, but I would think there would be one somewhere. And if not, I guess we don't need that in there if we're not going to have such a report. Or if it's required, then we need to do it.
One of the two, you take it out or do it.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Anyone else have anything to add in 6?
I think we need to take a look at an old favorite that we've looked at before, which is dual credit coursework and credit for alternative courses and programs.
What numbers?
That is
300, 312, 310,
6,
312.
yeah, 6, 310, and 6, 312. We revised this after much discussion back and forth a year and a half ago. At the time, one of the comments that I made that we would revisit it, should revisit it if it does not seem to be meeting the needs of our students. There have been some issues with it, I think. And some of the wording, frankly, in the policy was not correct and supportive of what was being practiced, and it needed to be revised. We met with Mindy Ritchie and Council Fred Bredemeyer. We met with them, kind of go over that to kind of get an idea of what some of the revisions might be. There's not a lot, but a couple of the things that they wanted to go back to or that we have questions on is how much credit are we going to allow to be transferred in totally from outside into Galesburg High School. With dual credit, and frankly, as far as dual credit, if you're looking at it for high school graduation, most of the students that I've had that have had taken dual credit, they've not needed it for high school graduation. They were interested in it, to expand themselves and to get college credit. And something that a lot of people don't realize is the colleges don't care if it's on your high school transcript or if you got high school credit for it. Colleges really could care less. They just like to see that you've expanded yourself, you've gone above and beyond, and stretched yourself. And so they require, if you get a college course, they require you to send a college transcript anyway, along with your high school transcript for your 4-year school or for your admissions. So, so a student that might need it for graduation, to graduate on time, may not always be the student that should be taking it. And so that's something that we would need to be concerned about, because it's not really met as a credit recovery type thing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about courses that are taken outside of Galesburg High School, outside of the Galesburg High School curriculum. So that makes a separation between GADC courses, which are part of our curriculum, and also APEX courses, which are part of our curriculum. And APEX can be used for credit recovery, and that's a separate issue. So one of the things that I'm just putting in, this is a different board than we had before. So I thought I should put it out there for you. And if you have some concerns or about the policy or about the number of credits that are allowed under the current policy, it is up. It is up a full credit from what I think it's 1 full credit, wasn't it? 1 full credit from what it was before. And then the other question you need to ask is if any of those credits are going to be allowed for a student to be able to graduate early. And I think there's another issue in there. Are we going to allow students to count credits or courses that are taken outside of the regular school day or in the summer as dual credit? So those are all things that the board, and maybe too much to discuss at this point in time or tonight.
Yes.
But it's something that maybe you need to think about and you need to bring back and discuss further.
Well, just to give you some information in addition, so after we met and discussed that, I asked Mr. Houston to give me a number of students that received dual credit courses outside of high school, not including he gave me GABC numbers too, but not including GABC, it was 25 students.
And that counts for how many courses?
There's 25 students, and the total number of courses was 27. Not a lot.
How many students were taking courses outside Galesburg and not trying to get to a credit?
That I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean, it hasn't been unusual in the past. I've had students who were, very interested in, expanding and getting courses ahead of time, and so they would get them. I can think of a couple off the top of my head. They would take courses in the summer, go to Sandburg and take courses in the summer, as just the college courses. And again, the colleges that they went to, that they were going to or applying to, didn't care whether or not it was a dual credit course. And again, most of the time, the students that are taking dual credit courses are not needing it for high school graduation anyway. So.
28 students, sorry. 28 students, total courses, 45.
So how many students do you want?
Yeah.
It's the whole year what they're registered for, up to this point.
That I don't know.
Sorry.
Do you remember, Mr. Houston?
What was that?
You said, was it up to this point, or was that registered for the whole year?
That would have been probably for this academic year, right?
Yes.
School year.
The current school.
I would say
Yes,
so.
current.
That sounds
Yes.
reasonable. I mean, that's a lot more than it used to be, certainly. The current schedule that we have, as opposed to the 6th period day, allows, it's much more flexible, I think, because of students being able to get their credits, the requirements done earlier, and then they're looking to expand their knowledge and get credit from college.
Do we have any more students, or any students that want to take more than the maximum debate classes? Is that been a problem?
It generally hasn't. I'm not saying that, this has been my experience. I've been out for 6 years now. So, I'd have to,
I think there's a few pieces in there, right? I think that whether or not Because the challenge for me is whether or not it's well known to students that they have the option. And then, because those that are probably going to take advantage of the option are those that are probably come from households that are advocating in that capacity. Does not mean that there's not students that are eligible that could be taking advantage of it or are in a place to do so. They just don't know that they can. So that would be one thing. I'm also interested in the courses that are most frequently used for dual credit. And are those the classes that we don't have access to teach? You know what I'm saying? Like I have a lot of questions about that. And so those would be some of the pieces of data that I would want to see you when we could, because I do believe that we have to continue this conversation. So those would be some of the pieces that I would be interested in. And I can't see Mr. Bredenmeyer. I can see his red shirt, but there you go. Because I know that you've helped us collect that data in the past, yes, or data similar to it.
Specific question. The most common dual credit classes are freshman comp 1 and 2, psychology, sociology, public speaking. Occasionally we have students do math, if they do AP calculus their junior year, and they've exhausted all their math options at GHS, they might go out and take a math class. But typically it's one of those 5.
If we say, okay, we're gonna not discuss this now and discuss it, like when is that? I'm just wondering because this just seems to be an ongoing thing that right now it limits, if there's only one student that wants to do it, that's still one student. We're not abiding by what they're trying to do in their educational path. So I know it's, we can just always keep having an ongoing conversation, but I don't want to do it all tonight because it would take
tonight.
But I just want to know what, I would have said it was our curriculum goal if we had to set it, but it's just one that, again, it's no easy fix, but to not limit people, I feel like it's something that needs to be sooner than later.
Well, it would be handy if we had, we were able to offer those dual credit classes within our schedule with our teachers, because in order to offer a dual credit class, you have to have a master's in that subject area. AP requirements are much less. So it's easier to schedule AP than it is dual credit for us within our day because we don't have the teachers that have a master's in their subject. If we had that, this would probably all be a moot point. There are some other barriers or I guess I would say. So we have obviously the proximity to the college that makes it a lot easier to do it. But then there's also, on the other end of it, if you fill out your proper paperwork, when you graduate, you can go to Stanford for free if you're from Youngberg. And so there's some financial advantage to not do it. And then, but that should, individual parents make that decision, that would be important to them. So we have a unique set of circumstances here that aren't necessarily transferable to other area districts around us, good and bad. I think it's something that I'm with you. I wouldn't want to try to hash this out tonight, but I think what I want to hear from all of you is what questions do you want us to answer that we can answer, and then how do we have a better conversation about this, say, in summer? I would say June, because we don't do that much in June. So we could have a lot more discussion on it and really get down to the details that we want us to get down to.
Just moving forward, Amy was speaking. Is there a need to have a limit at all? If the limit's not going to be reached anyway. Or if it is, it's by the total outlier to the situation.
Do we put a survey out to students and their parents to ask them what the need is?
The need may be someone who's now in 5th grade.
Well, we can at least go to freshmen and, if we gave a survey every year, at least have a better idea. I just want to be able to give you the information you need to make the best decision you can. So I just need to know the questions that you want to ask.
So in lieu of time, board members, please email the questions that you would want to have answered or further discussion of this particular portion of policy 6 so that we can therefore engage in that much longer conversation in June.
Right. And so in order to stay compliant with the Open Meetings Act, I will not be doing Google Doc, but if you send me all your questions, then I can compile them and I can send you back what the list of questions were from everybody. And then I can get that to whomever we need to get that to, probably Mr. Houston. He's handy, he's tall, so we can always see him. But then we can get those answers, so.
Can I ask one real quick? Because I'm obviously missing something. I don't understand why it says no dual credit will be given for any college course that starts after 3 p.m. or ends after 5 p.m. What is that about?
That was provision that was put in there that you would take out time during the school day and would give dual credit if you were taking a course during the school day, but not outside of the school day.
You still get college credit
You still get the college credit for it, but you just don't get the dual credit for the high school. And that's as I mentioned before, that's one that needs to be asked and answered.
Okay.
I would say go into 7th and 8th grade also. I mean, if you can, to ask those questions, because it's not unusual to have parents asking as we bring them into high school, asking some of those questions about what's available for my students.
Good. Always thought everybody here would be better to get it down there.
Okay, so anybody else have anything? Because I have two. And this room is warm. Folks are starting to zone. For me, 6:2, this little ditty about commemorative holidays, and teachers and students shall devote a portion of a school day on each commemorative holiday designated in the school code to study and honor the commemorated person or occasion. I would ask us to do that with critical engagement. So we all know, I believe, we might all know that, say, Columbus didn't necessarily discover America. And so we might want to make sure that we're critically engaging with who Columbus is and what he means to U.S. history. Or Martin Luther King, and critically engage in that conversation and beyond that individual. I want to make sure that we're taking advantage of those times to have conversations with our students, so that we're not just regurgitating the same kinds of things that we're doing all the time. I have something for 6:60, but I can't remember what it is because my question just says, are we actually doing it? And I would say 6:60 is about instruction and curriculum content. So I would just say that as the curriculum is being reviewed, that we're making sure.
Well, it depends the curriculum on it.
Right. Because I do think that, I think that we do some things well, but I will tell you, working in the field that I do, one of the greatest comments that I hear most often, working in the field that I do at Knox, from students of color, when they're not seeing themselves represented in the curriculum, when they're not seeing their part of American history being told, and they're not getting that until college, that impacts the way they see themselves. And in a district that is predominantly white, we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that all of our students feel represented in their curriculum. So I just want to make sure that, and I know that that's in there somewhere, but that portion of the policy is very long.
We do have 6th graders participate in responsive activities, right? So 3 should reflect that as well. Once again, it's grade 7 to 12. 6.
6 is limited.
We have 6th graders now?
Limited.
Wow.
Cross country.
Soccer track was long. Cross country track.
Soccer's done to the Y now. So soccer's done to the Y.
Okay, were there any comments about the current press policies that Dr. Asplund shared with us? Okay, so that was our first reading. So next month we'll come back for approval. Next. Consider approval of substitute pay. Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move it since I'm the one brought it up.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
You happy with it?
I would have, I think in talking with John, I understand the non-consecutive, not putting that in there. I would prefer that in there, but I still think it's a major step in the right direction in incentivizing people, and I really like trying to help retired teachers clear the hurdles that have been, for some reason, thrown in front of them to be substitute teachers.
Any other comments, questions? Allison?
Statham?
Aye.
Thanks. Savatas?
Aye.
Vestovich? Aye. Lyon? Pickrell? Sherby?
And what I believe everyone is still hanging on for, consider approval of the 2018-2019 school year calendar. Do I have a motion to approve? Second? All right, now discussion.
I know, but I don't know what the motion was to approve. Calendar one, was it calendar?
We'll say calendar one. Discussion.
I'll let Ember Glastonbush go.
Okay,
Get your microphone on.
thank you. All right. I came up with an alternative to the two alternatives before us. So if we're talking about option one, I didn't base it off of that one. I based it off of the second one, but starting school later. So I don't know how you want to proceed. So do we need to just vote yea or nay on one, or do we?
You can amend it.
Okay, so I want to amend, because that's where my notes are, option two.
We'll just have to vote the other one down. And keep going. You're right.
Okay. Can you pull up this option two on it? So to preface this, it's my understanding from all the emails that we've received that there's a strong consensus for those in the elementary schools who are not in air-conditioned buildings that we start later to reduce the number of days the students are in the classroom when they are very, very hot. I've worked in such buildings at the elementary, so I certainly understand that. On the other side of town, at the high school, where I've also worked and understand, there's a general consensus that, or at least majority of those who feel it's important to end the second term before winter break. And I understand those arguments also. So what I have done is I have taken this one, which begins actually on the 9th with an institute for 2 days. And I would like to take that one, and I would like to take the first 7 days of school, take them out of there, and on the 20th and the 21st, make those 2 days institute days, and then begin school on the 22nd. That's a full week later than what we began school this year. Also, it only gives 3 days to start that first week. And for elementary students, especially having been off for a couple of months, a full week of school, I think, in my mind, is difficult. 5 full days of school. And that would give them 3 days, 3 shortened days, because all the days before Labor Day are shortened, to kind of ease into things. The schedule's kind of going around and so forth, okay? So that's taken 7 days out. So remember that 7 days I just took out of it. Then we're going to move down to the end of first quarter, which is currently the 12th. I would move it to the 19th. So therein you could add, okay, when I took the 7 away, that took that to 36 days for that quarter. first quarter. Okay, then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna add 5 days, which brings that up to 41 for first quarter. So 41 days for the first term, or first quarter, however you want to call it. Okay? All right, so you could still have parent-teacher conferences the 26th, or you could move them if you wanted to, because that doesn't make that much difference. Okay, we go to term 2, or quarter 2, depending on your reference. I would go back to making the Thanksgiving holiday the same as it has been, which would move that 16th, the purple day, the 16th, which is an early dismissal day, to the Wednesday. And I would take those 2 days, which were part of the Thanksgiving holiday on the 19th to the 20th of November. What?
Would it be 3 days?
No, because the 16th is an institute, I mean, it's not an institute day, I'm sorry, it's an early dismissal day. It's a purple day.
So you have the 19th, 20th, 21st.
No, the 21st, you're gonna take the 16th and you're gonna move that day to the 21st. Because it's
You have the school day.
correct,
Correct.
yeah. So I got 2 days, 19th and 20th, all right? You're gonna add the 19th and 20th to, okay, when I took those other days out, that wound up it being, I'm getting myself confused. I need a math teacher now. It worked. Anyway, it winds up being 42 days for term 2. Okay, 41, pardon, and would end on 12/21. Okay, is the same as it's got it down there. Okay, all right. Then I would go to the rest of it is fairly simple. January, I would start on January 3rd instead of January 4th. I would not have January 3rd as part of the winter break. I would maybe take the 3rd and the 4th being the first 2 days back at school and then move the institute to the following week. So you don't just go 1 day and then have an institute. And then that makes that term, that quarter, 44 days, and at the same time. And 44 days in third term or third quarter, if you're going to have extra days, most of the time, I think when we have snow days, they're going to be that during that third term, that third quarter. So if you're going to lose 3 days or even 4 days, you're still going to be pretty close to what the other 2 terms are, the other 2 quarters are. And then fourth quarter basically remains the same. It puts the, I think there's an idea that maybe we need to make that spring break more consistent and a little bit earlier in the year and not be based upon the Easter holiday. So you notice the contractual holiday on the 19th, I guess that would be for Easter next year. But we'd have a full week of break. And always at the end of March. And still go ahead and give it a whirl and try the shortened days in May and see how it goes. And this is only for 1 year. So we started school a whole week later. I think it started on the 15th this year for students, and it'll start on the 22nd. Am I right on that? Yes, it started on the 15th this year for students, and it would start on the 22nd next year for students. So that gives us a later start date. Has something in there for everybody, I think. And that's my proposal.
Questions from board members?
I just want to, why the parent-teacher conference is in the second half of the year? Are they just not, they weren't listed up, I don't know, they weren't listed on the calendar you went off of.
Parent-teacher conference, there is one in October, on October 26th, which would be a week after the beginning of, it would be the end of the week of the second term or second quarter.
Right, but there's one in the coming up this
It's
you had it on the one calendar, but not the other.
That's
There's
no
no
oversight.
oversight.
Okay.
Yes,
And that's just a waiver day because they go at night.
Sure. Oh,
Right. But you're right.
Concerns with member Glasnovich's
So
questions?
tell me why it wouldn't work.
Can you explain Thanksgiving again? There's school on Wednesday or not?
No.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they have.
Early after.
School days.
I could always suspend.
No, I think, we were talking before the meeting, I think this meets the vast majority of the input we received from everybody, both administrators, I met with Dr. Exlin, the teachers, and other administrators I talked to. It's not gonna be perfect. And I don't think we're gonna achieve perfection, but I think it addresses the biggest legitimate concerns that were expressed to me.
Any other comments?
Yes, I'm going back to my horse in the cart here again. This calendar presupposes the number of contractual days off. It presupposes some early dismissals, which come from a contract, and it presupposes some issues relative to an academic schedule, which are all contractual, so I do not believe we should have any calendar until such time as the teacher's contract is agreed upon.
Aren't we required by statute to supply?
June 15th.
Well, I'll ask then, I know you're busy meeting and working on negotiations, right? So is that
Is
gonna
that
be
joke?
sooner than later, or, I
Wait,
mean,
you made a joke right
I
there?
don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just saying,
Okay.
like, I mean, as a parent who has to provide daycare, childcare for my kids, and there's many of us in the district, I understand your reasoning for making it, say the June date, but what, who's to say we're not gonna be sitting here doing this all summer long too, and June comes and we still don't have anything? I'm concerned.
How might the contractual days change this basic format?
Calendar days off, the calendar talks about things such as these early dismissals are all in the contract. The days off, early time off between for a holiday, it's in the contract.
Okay. So my question still is, is there if it's an early out, that doesn't change a school day as far as the day. If it's an early out.
It's embedded in our calendar.
No, if you change an early out to a full school day, it's not going to change this calendar. Won't be getting out for early that day, but we'll still be counting it as a school.
Are you recommending that your proposed calendar not have any of those items listed?
No, Can we approve it?
Can we amend it as needed?
You can.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was gonna say. It's another situation where I just don't want to keep kicking this. I understand your situation with the contract, I do. But I can't imagine what you're talking about is going, and if it does, then we would have to change, I guess we would just be forced to go back and amend the calendar.
Okay, any other questions? And do we have the verbiage needed?
You need to vote down the one you just amended.
Well, that or the motion can be withdrawn, or the person who seconded it. I would ask Ms. Glasnovich if she would withdraw her motion to approve calendar one.
I would, yes. I move to.
Well, and who seconded?
I move.
You withdraw your second. You withdraw your motion, you withdraw your
I
second.
withdraw my motion.
I withdraw my second.
All right, so now, do I have a motion?
Need a motion to approve the amended
Wait,
calendar.
But I do want to point out that the amended calendar, me counting it doesn't have enough days.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I told you I did that.
Can back up with it.
I would make a motion that probably will not be very popular among the people sitting with me. That calendar issue be tabled, that we put together something in line with Ms. Glasovich's ideas, and we either, I don't think we have any special meetings coming up, do we?
Well, unless we want to schedule a special meeting just to review collective bargaining issues prior to entering into collective bargaining. Just to make sure everybody's up.
Right.
We can set that date and then you can pass the calendar then, and that can be in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'd like to have this calendar set in a special meeting sometime before our next meeting. I'd like to get it done this month if possible.
Well, then, do we have, can you all find common time where we can meet for a special meeting about collective bargaining and have one action? Okay, so when I say that, you all pull out your calendars and check. So like specifically, the 21st of March, will you?
I'm back on the 21st, but I'm going to be required to be at a CPR training at 5 o'clock that evening, so if you could do it prior to that.
What time is your CPO?
5. And then I have an appointment after that from 6 to 8.
We could meet at 4:30, just really quickly to do the calendar vote, and then we could, 21st. And then we could stay in executive session to discuss the contract, knowing that you have to go if you could get out any of your concerns. Bruce, we good with that? 21st at 4:30?
I'll be like her, like, yeah, 4:30 helps.
All right. And we'll say 4:30 on the 21st. I'll have a one. 4:30 on the 21st until 5:30.
Yes.
And I guess right now I have a motion to table the calendar. There's the second.
I second it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
You vote?
Oh, aye. Sarantas?
Aye.
Westich? Aye. Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Saban?
Aye.
All right.
Gene, you want to come in more on it?
Fine, those 50 days.
I'll let you know.
Okay. Next, consider approval of the Chromebook replacement quote. Do I have a motion?
Oh, yeah, yes, great.
Is that a second?
Yes, please.
All right. Questions, conversations, or Mrs. Ham?
Go ahead.
I passed out a corrected quote to everyone. I apologize. I transposed. It was not $386,367. It was $368,367. So it was less than what you had received in your board packet. But this bundle does include, in case you did not see your email earlier today, that includes the device, a software packaging piece that we need for the Chromebooks, a case, and 3-year warranty.
On the spreadsheet that shows the 3 bids, that's $28,000 less than that sheet showed. Where do we lose that kind of money?
It's for more devices. If you look, it's for 1,350 devices. We're not purchasing that many.
Because we're losing students?
No, that was just a quote that Mr. Lachey had got
Okay,
and
it's all time.
anticipated.
Okay.
And so we actually then just used our grant monies, and that's what we had within there.
Well, and just, this isn't asked, but I want you all to be aware, I have asked Mr. Jacobson to put together a committee, which he has done, and they are working on looking at how we currently use technology. To use Maury's term, I'm not a Luddite, but I'm probably a lot closer to that on the continuum than a lot of people. And I support approving this quote tonight if you so choose, but I'm not comfortable just doing this in perpetuity. I would like to see how we're actually using these Chromebooks. I think it's appropriate to see how we're doing with what we're doing with them. And How, I mean, if I went out and said, hey, I want to hire $368,000 for the teachers, and I have no metrics for telling you how it improved anything, I think everybody laughed me out of the room, but somehow with computers, we just go, yeah, that's fine. So I just would like to see what we're doing so that we can feel good about this purchase in years to come. And maybe we'll continue with it, maybe we won't, maybe we'll amend it, maybe we'll, I don't know. I mean, we have no preconceived notion for what it is, but you know, we just want to make sure that this is the best plan going forward. We just don't want to continue to just roll this over without thinking about it.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more.
Any other questions about the motion? Allison?
Surratt.
Aye.
Rossovich. Aye. Lane.
Yes.
Pickle. Aye. Shelby.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Thanks.
Next, consider approval of summer baseball trip request. Is Coach Pickle here?
Mr. Flater.
The nice presentation last night.
Mr. Flater, you want to just briefly say what these are for?
Yeah, this year, in addition to what he had asked for last month, there are additional trips that he would like to take, and that's what's before you right now.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Sorry, questions?
You know, the link won't open, so that's my concern is where are they approving? Because I don't remember.
There's three, I thought there's three different ones that he had. I can't get it to open to look at it.
Are they happening before next month?
Oh, no, there's
Then
it's
can
the
we-
summer.
I personally would, I mean, I don't vote, I personally would wait. Because I know that he gave me good reason, I heard him, but I don't remember him. So I would like to have everybody have that information from them before they do it.
You'll see more of these too, working with Mrs. Ham. This is kind of a standard procedure that we're going to have all of our staff throughout the district, any overnight or out of state trips will be presented to the board for approval.
Okay, so we're moving to table until next.
There's been a motion.
We move to table. Yeah, to put one until this month.
Someone just has to withdraw their motion.
I'm so glad that you were so aware of Robert's rules because
I withdraw my motion.
And I withdraw my.
Right, next. Registration, oh, do we need a roll call for that?
Oh, you do the table, oh, the table, no, you don't.
It's okay. Registration fee discussion, Dr. Aslan.
Thank you. We would like to, for your consideration, we would like to separate out the activity fee from the registration fee as part of registration. As you know, we have some issues with timestamps and things of that sort with people registering if they're a free lunch person and they don't pay their $5 or $10 activity fee. They're not considered registered. So we would like to separate those out and make that an elective purchase for people. If they don't want to buy an activity pass for their kid, don't buy one. But at the same time, if you don't buy one and you come to a game and you don't have a pass that shows that you have a pass, then we expect you to pay. So in speaking, Mr. Flater, he does have some concerns about the manageability of that, but if we were able to have stickers available at the offices in each office, that students could put it on an ID, and for elementary students who don't carry IDs, we'd have to come up with a different plan. But we do feel like it addresses a concern of how we go about saying who's registered and who's not, and making it more equitable. So that's not, we're not asking you to vote on it tonight, we're just asking you to think about it, and if you have any concerns or if there's something else that comes up between now and next month, I would have the expectation that we would move that forward as a formal recommendation. And we also, as part of registration, we also want to open up this space here and have it available for parents who don't have internet access available. And we're not gonna open it at midnight on a night where people are gonna have parties. We're open at 8 in the morning. And so everybody has the same access, presumably, to getting their child registered on time. So we're making it as level of playing field as humanly possible. So that when we do, if we do have to do overflow, we can at least tell folks, hey, we removed as many barriers as humanly possible and try to get that to make it as even as we can. If you have any thoughts on it.
You want to talk about the timeline of kindergarten registration?
Yeah, so we're gonna try to move kindergarten registration up to April, and then in years hence, I would like to move to January. So that we have a better idea of our enrollment, and try to get those things accomplished rather than later. And then for this year's registration, we do want to move registration up to start May 1st and just leave it open until, indefinitely. So for people that want to register their children May 1st for next year, you can do it. And we would have it available on Skyward and have it open and ready to go. And for those that are returning, it shouldn't be a very difficult process.
And we'll have 3 off-site registrations during the summer to help people.
Yes, we are still planning to have 3 off-site. We'd have one in Nielsen in June, since that would be the cooler month. And then Steele and Lombard in the warmer months of the air conditioning. But it would be open, as an ongoing basis. So we don't believe we will need a field house registration.
So then to clarify, if we're hoping to open registration May 1st, the only thing about fees that will be changing is whether or not we vote on taking this and separating it out.
Correct. Yeah, we are not, I'm sorry, I should also mention, we aren't recommending raising any fees, adding any more fees. No changes other than separating out the activity from registration.
So your discussion previously of not having fees at all, hasn't, we have not looking at that.
We were not recommending that at this time, but that doesn't mean it's not something we have to continue to discuss. And, we don't, in relation to other areas, schools, we feel like we're very low, which is good. That's a good thing. But at this point in time, we haven't gone so far as to recommend eliminating them entirely.
Okay. If you have questions or concerns, please make sure that you get them to Dr. Aspen before next month. Boundary study discussion, Dr. Aspen.
Thank you. We met as a committee, an ad hoc committee, Member Sherfy and Member Banks and Mrs. Ham and myself 2 weeks ago. And we went through the software and went through all the capabilities of the software and how we were able to group students. At this time, after looking at all the different boundary options, the committee, with full knowledge of knowing that we're in the middle of a building study and how we may reorient buildings in the future, we didn't feel like this was a year to change a boundary because we'd be making a change to maybe make another change. And so we wanted to just keep the boundaries where they have been for next year because we believe that the building study will probably necessitate some other changes down the road. And we didn't want parents to get confused.
Questions, comments?
As I looked through the report this month, once again, I saw our 2 newest elementary schools are the most underutilized. I was hoping we would have some plan to maximize the use of our most modern elementary schools instead of underutilized. I understand the logic, because you may have some more serious moves coming forward, but I thought we could use minimal pieces to fill the classrooms that are air-conditioned schools.
I agree with that, but I also have to bring up, constant overflow. We still deal with constantly moving kids around anyways. I don't understand if we could get, buildings full that need to be full, then we might not have to bus as much as we are. And I think that's another issue that confuses parents. You're in this district, so you should go to this school, but not really. Just kidding. This class is full because, we still have exceptions of people that are allowed to be. I don't know. I think if you can tell me that we're going to have a building study in a year and it's going to be all, but I don't think we can make that assumption either. So I'm cautious.
Waiting to see if member Stephen has thoughts.
No, I mean, I agree with Maury, that's why I brought it up a few meetings ago. You know, I don't like seeing at registration time, you know, some schools overfilled and some underutilized, as you said, and that's why I was hoping looking at this would start addressing that problem. I feel like we're kicking the can down the road and hope we only do it one more time. I mean, I know we've got big things coming up, and I know that it was going to impact it, but our policies, I think, said for good reason, it's to be examined every year, so we can tweak those lines and fully utilize the classrooms.
I'm gonna, excuse me, say again too, I don't even know the last time it was done. So I feel like it's way overdue, even with what's coming. And when I heard about the software, I was like, oh great, like this isn't about bias of this house should be here. This is all gonna be data-driven results and proof. And we saw the building numbers in the report tonight, and it's like, oh, I mean, I've heard from teachers that have the lower classes, it's much more manageable, it's much more easier. But meanwhile, the other 4 schools I'm speaking of elementary have capacity, are full, and you know, it's just a very uneven distribution of, I think, of our resources and students.
Well, I guess I could kind of address some of that. During the committee, I think it was kind of a consensus among us that one of the first things that we wanted to do was minimize disruption to parents and not have them, you know, have them so they know where the school or child's going to go in year to year. And particularly since we're in the middle of a building study and anticipating potential changes in the immediate short term, I think that was one of the things that kind of pushed us this direction. I think if the board wants us to go back and revisit it and create boundary lines every year, we can certainly do that. I'm not particularly a fan of doing that. I know I purchased my house so I could live in a certain school district. And I think other people, you know, do the same. They want to know where their children are going to school. Now, you know, the second point that I had during the meeting is I also want to, you know, maximize the utility of our buildings. And at this point, with the data that was presented to me at the meeting, I don't think I could juggle where we're going to push students with the data that we had in order to create that. I think that we probably need more information to do that. But like I said, this was a committee between myself, Banks, and Dr. Esplin, Ms. Hammond. I don't know, do you have a different consensus?
Well, not just parents, but the children too.
Right.
You know, I mean, they're going to school now, and we say, oh, well, this year you gotta go to this school, and then the next year you might have to go to another school. I don't know. Again, I can appreciate utilizing the buildings. And perhaps, I don't know, perhaps we could go back and look at it with kind of anticipate what we think might happen and try to, you know, be as the least disruption as possible, but there's no guarantees. We don't know what's going to happen.
I don't think there's any way to anticipate what decisions are going to be made, you know, as far as building usage.
Well, and to piggyback on that comment, one of the reasons, the biggest reason we want to move kindergarten registration to January is we have no idea what, I mean, some, but we don't have, we have like 40% of an idea of where the kindergartners live. And so to make an enrollment decision based on enrollment right now, we don't know. I mean, so when we tried to do it, we took the 5th graders out, then you just had the K through 4 current there. You get a picture, but you don't know where that whole other 1/6 of that puzzle is coming from. So after this year, we feel like we would have a much better, and after the building study, and I know people are saying, well, you're kicking the can down the road. And I would be happy to go through the data with you to try to make a good decision, but I don't know that a good decision can be made at this point. And I don't know that it would be doing parents a service by bouncing them and their children from one building to the next. And if we want to do it again, maybe we can do it again. That's not a problem because I personally would like to make sure our air conditioned schools are full. But, you know, if anybody wants to come in and look at that with us, once again, we'd be happy to sit down with you and show you. We have clustered enrollment, or we have clustered population in two parts of town. And I don't know that any building study, given our current situation of buildings, is going to solve that evenly, depending on what your definition of even is.
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing that popped out regarding the March enrollment sheet that I'm looking at, we have classrooms and grade levels, as Member Pickles pointed out, that, you know, are not even close to their maximum level, but then we have classrooms that are. And it just, if we're not gonna redraw boundaries in light of a building study, because I recognize disruption. I think that next year in enrolling, I would just make sure that we're paying attention to that equity of classroom. I mean, I'm bothered by the fact that there's a classroom in here that has, where did I see it? I hope it wasn't that low. Yes, 16 students or 15 students, and their counterparts are working with 23, 26, 26. I mean, that's a huge discrepancy, and I don't know if there's a reason, if that's a special classroom.
Well, and you're going to get that in general with neighborhood schools. I mean, in speaking very generally, the way you're going to even out enrollment is if you go to attendance centers. I mean, that's just how it is. To be able to move, when we have about 14 to 19% mobility within the district at any one time, that becomes difficult to establish classrooms in a building where they move from one neighborhood to another. And so that makes it, you know, that we have many examples of students who start the year living in one address and go to another address. And so that makes it more difficult. So when you have neighborhood schools in a high mobility district, the only way to really structurally fix that is to go to attendance on a year-to-year basis.
On larger catchment areas, they don't have to be single grades. They can just, for example, if you have two buildings that are the same grades.
That's fair.
The catchment could be larger.
If you had larger, right.
The catchment area is larger.
Yes. If our buildings had more capacity to do that. Yes, that is fair.
Another factor that wasn't mentioned during our discussion is because we were in the middle of contract negotiations, we don't know what our maximum class sizes are going to be. So that also impacted, you know, the distribution of students based upon.
Yeah, so that was a big part of our discussion. Thank you for bringing that up.
And I will say, as I do every month, I will reiterate this, and it is an unpopular opinion. I recognize that families buy their homes in certain areas because they want to go to a certain school. But at the end of the day, there is not one of our schools that is not worthy of a student being taught, being cared for, and a staff willing to do that. And if you think otherwise, then I'm going to be very clear and say maybe you need to ask yourself some internal questions about what it is that you're looking for in a community, because we belong and we live in a very diverse community. And oftentimes I hear those statements and those sentiments in regards to our schools on our south side, and it is the one thing my blood rate is increasing right now. All of our schools have wonderful staff and wonderful families that participate in them, regardless of what side of the city they live on. Okay. So do we have a direction for
discussion?
Right.
Yeah, it's just a discussion item. All I'll say, and I don't mean to say the wrong thing to someone. I'm disappointed with the committee's
recommendation, but there's nothing in front of me to vote on. I just think we're, like I said, punting something that could be addressed for the reasons that Ms. Pickrell said, and Lori said, I had brought up, that's why I wanted this done. I agree with what you just said about people. In different schools, you know, we're saying we don't want to do it because we don't want to inconvenience a couple people, so instead we're going to inconvenience some other people. By telling them when they walk in, sorry, you're full, I think your kid crossed town. When we could have tried our best to alleviate that problem beforehand. Again, I just think it's silly. There's no perfect solution. I understand that. We have transient school population. I get that, but it just seems like we can look at the data we've got and say, hey, let's try with the data we've got to equal the school classes. It's got nothing to do with classroom maximums. I mean, we're trying to reduce students in already full classes. So I'm just disappointed, but there's nothing in front of me, and we shall trudge on.
Okay, trudging on. Intergovernmental agreement for whatever it takes conference, otherwise known as the conference. Mr. Franklin.
This is just, we've been meeting in committee. This is an agreement for discussion on just basically establishing the parameters with which these groups, these three entities will work going forward for this annual conference, which I believe this is the third year of the conference. So it's with the agreement between Carl Summer College, Galesburg District 205, and both the Regional Office of Education number 26 and 33 collectively. Three entities.
My only question, Luke, and I read through this, what we're financially obligating ourselves to seems to be sort of a moving target. We're obligating ourselves to contribute whatever this executive committee, I can't find the paragraph now, sets as our contribution. I don't know, is there somebody else that's more familiar with this agreement? I saw it before I came here tonight.
I think it's in, sorry, I think it's in section 2.2.
Thank you. Well, that's where it should be. But I don't see it there. I mean, the reason I was concerned was 2.2 is a good place to start. You know, this group is going to hire staff and have expenses, and I'm not saying it's not a great idea.
Was it in Article 3? Finance.
I don't believe it was the intention for the conference to hire staff.
No.
Matt, can you help me out with that?
If we sign on with this, somewhere buried in here, it is that we would pay whatever the executive committee sets as our contribution.
2.23, the employment of all staff hired as part of the agreement.
That's the committee.
So there's, assuming there'll be staff then.
Right. Makes the assumption to me.
I'll go back and look at that.
Yeah, there's no staff hired, and there are no further contributions from any of the three entities. It's essentially self-sustained.
Self-sustaining with what?
So again,
Self-sustaining with what?
registration fees, when people pay to attend, that covers our expenses annually.
Well, this is first reading. You want to put in,
Well, I guess.
any staff hired has to be ratified by the full board of each entity?
No, what I was thinking was something to the effect that any funding contributions had to be approved by the governing body of that entity.
I mean, currently, we don't, the district doesn't fund anything, does it?
No.
And that's why now there's no funding. So if there were to ever be any money, like, I guess as I'm thinking out loud, we don't have the ability to spend any money for the district, you do.
Well, that's why I was bringing
Or
it up.
who agree to.
That's why I was bringing it
So,
up.
I mean, there's no way we could ever spend any money.
Unless we signed a contract that says we had to. Yeah, we approved it.
Well, I understand, but there's no way to actually, I mean, you could put it in there because it would be still the same as far as we're concerned. I don't see any harm in putting it in there because we'd have to approve it anyway. You'd have to approve it.
I think the language that's a little bit concerning is 3.1.1, which is that each member will promptly do all things necessary to legally commit the fiscal agent to the timely payment of obligations with vendors. I think that's a little unclear what exactly all things necessary is fairly wide open. So there's several ways you could address that. Certainly you could put a cap on contributions or some type of specific authorization.
Okay.
So we'll come back with an amended contract that addresses that
And John,
concern.
I'll read it more and.
I appreciate it. So what I have is 2.2.3, would be something where it would be amended to say funding must be approved by the funding entity. And then we want to look at, so we got 3.1.1 as well. Well, in my notes, I want to make sure I bring it back to what you're asking for. Okay.
If anybody finds anything else.
I was just gonna say, I imagine if anyone.
Yeah. Yep. As you have it, yeah.
Okay, next we have personnel. First, we have consider approval of the personnel report.
We need to.
Do we amend
B,
before or
because
after?
there's a name for B
Right.
that goes in A.
Right.
And one that needs to come out of B.
Right. So how do we want to do that?
Legally, Luke, you just pull it out, right?
We need to pull two names from B and one is going into A, but one's coming off completely.
Well, the one that's
Your microphone.
As far as B, there's several, for the one that's coming off completely, you simply can amend B to not act with regard to that individual. In terms of moving someone to A, I think it's essentially the same thing. You're not acting under B with regard to that person, and then you amend your personnel report where you approve anything.
Okay, you have it amended there? You have it amended, John?
I have on A, this personnel agenda as presented, I have amended it.
You can amend it now, right?
We can do that.
So, on the agenda for B, you have a number of names listed in this, and you are not taking that action with regard to two of those people.
Correct.
So your motion would be to take that action with regard to the remainder.
Right.
So B is easy to adjust.
Right.
In terms of taking someone off that list and adding them to some type of action under the personnel report, you would amend your personnel report and then vote on the amended personnel report.
Okay.
So you recommend
Would I
B
read it?
first then?
I think logically that's easier.
And which names are we removing?
I can read that because I know. Okay. So a motion to consider approval of resolutions reference the dismissal of a professional educator licensed employees, Michelle Mustang, Bruce Spindler, Michael Garber, and Andrea Calloway.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Allison?
Pickrell. Sherby. Staples. Banks. Swanton.
Aye.
Glaskovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Okay, now moving back to A, consider approval of the personnel report. Mr. Bradburn.
So that is presented with you, to you in your packet, and we would add, Ann Mitchell, as a resignation to that report.
Okay, so do I have a motion to consider approval of the personnel report with Ann Mitchell added in that report as a resignation?
So moved.
Second.
That's the only change. Everything in here is still. Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Allison?
Sherby.
Aye.
Staples.
Aye.
Banks. Swanton.
Aye.
Glaskovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell. Aye.
Next, consider approval of resolution reference the honorable dismissal of certain educational support personnel for 2 employees, Ann Brandstetter and Christina Guerrero. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Allison?
Staples.
Aye.
Banks. Swanton.
Aye.
Glaskovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell. Aye. Sherby.
And finally, consider approval of resolution reference the honorable dismissal of a professional educator licensed employee, Timothy Doherty. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Can I give an explanation? Just so everybody understands, this is because Coach Doherty is retired in TRS, we need to look for somebody who's a TRS paying person in that position, it's a full-time position. So he's got nothing to, more losing the job, he done a great job, but we have to do our due diligence to find somebody full-time.
Any other questions? Allison?
Banks.
Aye.
Swanton.
Aye.
Glaskovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell. Aye. Sherby.
Aye.
Staples.
All right, and now we've reached what will be the end of our meeting. Comments by the Board of Education. To my right, Member Glaskovich.
I have
Nothing further. Member Sherby. Member Pickrell. Member Banks. Member Statham.
Nothing additional.
Member Lyons.
Point to your right. Thank you.
I will just say thank you very much for Valerie for sticking around. It didn't feel comfortable up here, so I can imagine what it felt like out there. Thank you. I'm hoping that the business that we conducted in front of you feels like it was informative. Sometimes it can feel like you're out there and you don't have any questions and you don't have the ability to ask them, but hopefully we converse enough up here at the table that allowed you to understand where decision-making process is coming from. Do we have any future agenda items to add?
We are revisiting the boundaries. Right? Isn't it how it was left?
You want us to reconvene, we can.
Isn't that, I'm not, I guess that was my question. Did you think we were, what do you think we left?
You do it quickly.
Okay. And our future meeting dates. You have just heard us at the table plan on a special meeting on March 21st at 4:30 to vote on the calendar and for a special meeting closed session to look over contracts and negotiations. And then our normal regular board meeting is scheduled for April 9th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.
Glaskovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Sherby. Staples.
Aye.
Banks.
Aye.
Some point, I'm gonna need to pick your brain about this, media report. Yeah, I did everything you two told me to do, and I'm getting zero input from the shot. Yeah. It's all the way up.
Other meetings, when you pick the technology one, you should be able to come to a technology meeting at some point.
I'm just, oh my goodness, I feel you. Oh,